Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review, or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and expands our base. When I record every day, I have to think very carefully about what it is I'm saying. I know that there are many, many people who listen to this podcast and really want to understand my perspective. My perspective is mine alone, but I appreciate the fact that so many of you respond and want to hear what I have to say. This morning is a difficult podcast. Two attorney generals, Alberto Gonzales, a Republican who served under George H.W. Bush, and Merrick Garland, the current Attorney General of the United States, are making and have made today strong statements. Roberto Gonzales, in a piece in the New York Times, explaining why he, a Republican, is going to vote for Kamala Harris, why he cannot, in good conscience, vote for Donald Trump. It is an important, powerful statement which should be read by all Americans. And today, in just a few hours, Merrick Garland will address the Justice Department, saying to them, I have your back, that threats of retribution by Donald Trump, should he be elected president, need to be taken into account. Now, I don't think that Merrick Garland is going to mention Donald Trump, but the implications are clear. And I want to be clear. Very often in an election, people say to me, well, I'm not voting for, I'm voting against. In this campaign, I am voting for and I am voting against. I have known Kamala Harris for many years. I am voting for her because I believe that her debate performance, coupled with her experience, makes her temperamentally qualified to be President of the United States. I am voting for her because I believe that she will run a solid administration. It doesn't mean I have to agree with everything that Kamala Harris says or does. Let me be clear, I don't agree with anybody 100%, except my wife. As to the question of Donald Trump's threats against members of the Justice Department, his threat to weaponize the Justice Department if he becomes president, the American people have to understand that when Donald Trump speaks about the fact that he believes that the Justice Department has been weaponized against him, in fact, what has happened is he's being held to account for what he has done and what he wants to do in the future. I will be listening to Merrick Garland very closely, but I want everyone to understand very clearly. I am voting against Donald Trump. I stand with Alberto Gonzales, with Dick Cheney, with Liz Cheney, with Adam Kinzinger, with countless Republicans, over 200 at this point, who have worked in Republican administrations. I am voting against Donald Trump for a simple reason. I believe that Donald Trump, and he demonstrated it on the stage of that debate, is an existential threat to American democracy. For him to, in a debate for the presidency of the United States, to stand on the stage and talk about what has been going on in his mind in a small town in Ohio, where he accuses Haitian refugees of eating cats and dogs, knowing that even the Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, has said this is not true, knowing that the leadership in that county have said it is not true. It is a simple expression that I am going to use now. Donald Trump is a conspiracy theorist who should never be allowed near the Oval Office. The fact that on January 6th, 2025, additional security is going to be provided for our nation's capital so that there can never again be an assault like the one on January 6th speaks volumes to the danger to American democracy. Let me explain. I'm not a hysteric. I am not someone who does not think carefully about what I am saying. But what I am suggesting to you is that Donald Trump, in the next months before November 5th, will have to be judged by the American people. Now, I learned something else. It depends on who you listen to. Last night, I listened to Fox. I listened to Fox, particularly to Sean Hannity. I listened to an explanation, to a defense, to a determined effort to discredit Kamala Harris and to applaud Donald Trump. There was not a hint of criticism or rejection of Donald Trump's conspiracy theories. Fox is no longer, and perhaps never was, a news station. I used to say that to call it Fox News was an oxymoron that could not be more true than it is today. But remember who people watch and listen to when they get their news. People who listen to Fox believe that Kamala Harris is Comrade Harris, a communist, a socialist, a left-wing extremist. They believe it because they are fed this nonsense on Fox. This is something that needs to be exposed. I know that we cannot go back to the days of Walter Cronkite or a Huntley Brinkley. I understand that. I understand that the nature of the way we receive news is completely different than it once was. But if you ask me why the division exists in this country as emphatically as it does, it is because of Fox News, which I would remind you lost a major lawsuit, had to pay almost $1 billion because of their reckless so-called reporting. This is an appeal. As someone who believes in American democracy, as someone who believes that the system must work, everything must be done to defeat Donald Trump. He is an existential threat to American democracy. And only with a massive defeat can the Republican Party begin the process of rebuilding. Only with a massive defeat can the spell cast by a cult, the cult of Donald Trump, can it possibly be broken. I want to apologize for having to say this, because my intention in launching this podcast was to deal with an entirely different set of issues. I wish every day that I were back on the radio, that I would have the opportunity on the radio to discuss this with you in person. I would like to hear what you have to say. Please do go to LinkedIn or Facebook. Communicate with me. Let me know your reaction. But please be aware that I am afraid for my country. I am afraid for the system of law and government, which I have grown up with. I am afraid that the American system is threatened, and it's threatened by a man and a movement that he leads. It can happen here. That's the whole point. And we must do everything we can to prevent it from happening here. This is my appeal today. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. And please spread the word about this podcast and send it to a friend or more friends. I think what I'm saying means something. I hope you do too. And of course, my special appreciation to the wonderful producer of this show, Go-Go Zoger, and frankly, makes my job much easier. I am John Rothman, and you are listening to Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you tomorrow.